There we go. Yeah, so thank you for joining us, everybody. It's exciting to have you here to talk about the Finchley Sustainability Forum and the Pollinator Trail and all these initiatives that we're hoping to launch in the Finchley area. I thought maybe we could start by introducing ourselves tonight. Kate, Shiri and I and Holly are here to talk to you about all these different things. And so my name is Stephanie Romig-Orr, and I'm a Finchley resident and a participatory artist and designer. And I'm currently working with Studio Makegood, as some of you know, on a project reviving the High Street in Finchley Central through community-led events programme. So that's sort of how I got to know Shiri and how I got involved. Well, we sort of came up with this initiative. Shiri, would you like to introduce yourself?
So hi everyone, I'm Shiri. I'm a church end resident, so Finchley as well. I try to do my best when it comes to the environment. I'm active with Barnet Friends of the Earth. And I had an initiative called Eco Show and Tell, which is basically fairs that bring together residents and environmental groups and things like that. Kate?
Yeah, I'm Kate Brown. I'm from East Finchley, and we've had our Pollinator Project running since January, and I'm going to say a little bit about the actions we've taken so far. That's me. So I'm a long-standing Finchley resident.
And Holly?
Hi, I'm Holly. I'm an ecology PhD student and a volunteer for the Bombi Conservation Trust. I'm also a London National Park City Ranger for Enfield and Barnet. I used to live in Finchley. I've moved back now to Southgate, but I'm still very close by. I still want to be involved.
Great. So I just want to let you know what we'll be sort of covering this evening. Firstly, Shiri and I would like to introduce the Finchley Sustainability Forum and sort of talk to you about that. And then I think Kate Brown will talk to us about the East Finchley Pollinator Trail and her experience with that. And then we will get some information about pollinators from Holly Pringle. And then we'd really like to hear from you, what your ideas are, what we can do together, how you can get involved. So I think that there'll be space at the end of the session for us to have a conversation and hear from you as well. So firstly, I'd like to introduce the Finchley Sustainability Forum and the sort of related projects that we've come up with. The idea of the Finchley Sustainability Forum is really to sort of bring people together in the Finchley area who are invested in sustainability, who are you know, aiming to create positive change in our area, but we're really with an immediate focus on the environment. And so we've set this up. So Shiri and I, in conversation with Carolyn, who is here as well. She was there in the initial conversation. And it's really to unite the wide range of bodies in N3 and N12 at the moment, whose ethos and activity sort of highlight the importance of sustainability and environmentalism within our community. And yeah, engage with the initiatives that would benefit the environment and improve quality of life in Finchley. And so through our conversations, we've sort of come up with 3 initiatives that we'd like to share with you. The first one is the Finchley Green Trail. So the idea of the Finchley Green Trail is really to unite all the green spaces and the communities that take care of them around Finchley. So I guess it would form a sort of cohesive group of people who are environmentally minded, who really care about these green spaces, and highlight, you know, the connection that people in Finchley feel with nature and green spaces. I mean, working through this project with Make Good, one of the key themes that came out of our research of things that people are really care about in our area is, you know, this connection with nature and sustainability and so on. So I think it's really positive. And the idea is that once we sort of brought together all these community groups who are taking care of these green spaces, we could create a map, and then that would encourage visitors to discover and connect with these green spaces around Finchley and showcase the activity of these local groups. So that's the first initiative that we've come up with. And then the second one is the idea of the Pollinator Corridor, which Kate Brown will talk to you about the experience of doing in East Finchley. But the idea is to increase the amount of pollinator-friendly plants in our sort of public spaces, but also to engage with high street businesses and organizations to include them in the Pollinator Corridor. So for example, by having planters outside with bee-friendly plants, things like that. I know Shiri has already been looking at grants for this. So we're hoping we would get some funding, at least for the plants and so on. So yeah, that's really exciting. And then the last initiative is the Eco Show and Tell Fair, which will be happening on May the 22nd in Finchley Central in Albert Place between 2:30 and 4:30. So Shiri will talk more about that with you. But before I pass over to Shiri, I think our overall goal is to have a place where we can discuss our specific needs and work together to achieve results. And so we'd really like to hear from you, you know, whether it's by email afterwards or in the discussion now, so that we can kind of work together if you're interested in being part of this. So I'll pass over to Shiri now, and she can talk to you about the Eco Show and Tell. Oh no, or yeah, that's probably.
Thank you very much. So the Eco Show and Tell is happening on Sunday between 2:30 to 4:30, right next to Tesco. And we've included a few pollinator activities as well. So we have a pollinator arts and crafts for children, and that will have informational posters as well. We have a beekeeper from East Finchley called Lucy, Miel de Lucy, who will sell local honey, and we'll talk to the children and any other interested party about pollinators. And then we have Polly, of course, who volunteers with the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, who will have a table as well. So she's available to speak about specifically about bees and whatever else that you want to share, Holly. And just quickly, I mean, it's hopefully everyone here understands already how important this project is. Just a few key statistics are that the decline in the UK flower-rich grassland is quite massive. So since the 1930s, over 97% of that type of area has been lost. And there was another study that's like a 30-year study between the 1980 and 2013, and that showed a third decline in wild bees and hoverfly species specifically, which were monitored. So I don't know if you see any results in your own gardens and open spaces. Personally, I see less and less, even though I try more and more. I don't know if it's because our neighbors have set astroturf on their grass, and I don't know if that sort of suddenly, instead of having like a supermarket offered to the pollinators, I'm like a small off license in a very deserted high street. So maybe that's why they don't come. But overall, I think there are definitely a lot of actions that we can take, both as individuals as well as groups. So all of us perhaps belong to some sort of network, whether it's allotments, places of worships, maybe schools, maybe friends and family. So hopefully the discussion today will give you some ideas and some inspiration, or maybe like bring up some ideas. And what we're hoping is that while Kate is speaking about East Finchley, and then I'll speak about additional ideas, is that everyone will maybe take notes of some ideas that they have about what we can do individually and as groups. And those ideas are the things that we are going to share at the end, in addition to any thoughts that they have. So let's move to Kate, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about what we've been doing in East Finchley since January. My sort of three points really. The sort of inclusion and information, so beginning with the letter I, that aspect. I'm going to talk about the practical things we've done, and finally I'll talk about future plans. So those three things, and I certainly won't exceed my 15 minutes and close me down if I do. So I said the first thing with the letter I is inclusion. We've tried to make the East Finchley project very accessible for people of all ages. So we have involved children, we've involved older people, and we've also tried to make it very inclusive. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if that's my voice being too loud. We've tried to make it inclusive. Even there are many people in our area who live in flats, and we've said that you can promote pollinating insects by what you do in your balcony, even with a pot on a window box, even a single pot. It's about our combined effort. And so far we've involved a local day nursery, primary schools, secondary schools, social housing, and also the Finchley Charities, which is a housing association with quite a lot of properties, lots of housing units in our area. We've involved the mosque and the Methodist Church, and we've also tried to be inclusive. Obviously, we would love there to be many sort of meadows in East Finchley on patches of grass, but we have said that we can assist pollinating insects, whether it's wildflowers, garden flowers, fruit trees, and indeed vegetables. Runner beans, for example, the flowers on runner beans are very attractive to pollinating insects. So we've tried to have a broad approach. And then the other thing with the letter I is our initial actions focused a lot on information. We started with the library, who actually have quite a good selection of children's books on pollinators and a number of relevant books for adults as well. I can say more about that. We're very lucky in East Finchley in that we've got a community newspaper, The Archer, which goes to 10,000 households. We launched in that, explaining what we were doing even before January, and we've done a small piece each month since then. We've also had a piece explaining the project in something called Village Roar, which is a magazine which covers East Finchley, Muswell Hill and Crouch End. We've done talks to groups, and we have also made ourselves available for one-to-one support. So just to give you a practical example, I recently, in one of the social housing flats, went to assist somebody who wanted to make their balcony as pollinator friendly as possible. And so that's what we've done on this sort of inclusion and information. Moving to the very practical things we've done. We had an initial launch meeting in January. As a result of that, one of the local day nurseries opposite East Finchley Chew came back to us and said, we've got a great big grass bank. We're happy to deturf it and plant it up with wildflowers. And if there's time at the end, I'll show you how that's looking now. Just outside our library, there was a narrow strip of completely neglected flower bed, and we just walked in and said, we'd like to plant this up with pollinating plants. Is that acceptable? The librarian was a little taken aback, but he said, okay, yes. Then one of the local playgrounds, Marketplace Playground, just off the high road in East Finchley, they want to green that park and have very big ambitions for it. but in the short term, that there was a completely neglected, quite broad flower bed, and we got a team together to clear that and plant it up with lots of spring bulbs. And we've started planting it now with other pollinating plants. And just to show it doesn't all go smoothly, one of the groups that came forward was the specific residence groups on Leopold Road N2. Again, there was some very neglected 1980s street flower beds, which were completely choked, very inaccessible. Nobody used the area at all. So the local people put a lot of effort into clearing it, only to discover that the whole structure of the beds was not particularly safe. They then had a successful bid to the council for repair of the beds, and they've got a big sum of money for both plants and for the repair, but the council has been very, very slow. So the beds are completely bare and the weeds are re-establishing. But in a way, for the pollinators, they're sort of worse off, because now we've got nothing on those beds, and people were they did put some bulbs in, but those bulbs have now finished. And now some other people are saying, well, why did you do that? You know, and they're saying, well, there's no point of putting a great deal of effort until the repair is completed. So that's an example of where things can go a bit awry. One of the other things we did was we had a seed swap in Cherry Tree Wood Open Space, the park, on the 20th of March. It was seeds and plants with a great emphasis on pollinating plants, and we had a whole display explaining about the importance of pollinators and what people could do in their own gardens and in public spaces. And that had a very big attendance. We did it just outside the very popular cafe there. We didn't ask any permissions. We just took our folding tables and our plants, and, you know, groups from the 2 local allotments brought vegetable seedlings to swap and seeds to swap, and a lot of pollinating plants were involved there. A young man who has got a sunflower project in East Finchley in memory of his grandfather, he arrived with hundreds of sunflower seeds. We gave away I think about 30 ready-made packs of a little plant pots and compost and a pack of sunflower seeds from that to any children that came. And we've now got a related competition for the tallest sunflower in East Finchley, which is up and running. So so far we've got about a dozen spaces. So in Cherry Tree Wood, right next door to the tube station, there's a long-standing guerrilla garden sort of community. The N2 gardeners have really sort of beefed up their pollinating plants on that patch. Just a range of areas. There's planting outside the mosque, there's planting at the schools and so on. So that's taken off. We obviously don't know what people are doing in their own private gardens, but we've stressed that it's both public space and private space, because it's just all of those spaces, if there are pollinating plants, we're using this term nectar cafes in terms of the bees and the other pollinating insects. Our future plans, Saturday 4th of June, 10 AM onwards in Cherry Tree Wood near the station gate, because that's the Jubilee weekend. We're building a Buckingham Palace, so we're building a bug hotel as a way of celebrating the Jubilee, with children on all ages invited. And we're currently, if anybody knows a good source of things like pine cones or has any relevant things that we can fit into our bug hotel. We're wondering about a lot of people have complained about our rather uninspiring flat council flower beds outside Budgeons and Iceland in East Finchley. One of those flower beds is recently one of the shopkeepers who's got tired of an overgrown shrub obscuring their frontage has just come and completely hacked shrub to the ground and left it in a terrible mess. And one suggestion is that we actually use some of our limited funds, and I'll answer questions on funding, to plant it up with pollinating plants. We do have an Instagram, EF Pollinators, and try and post regularly, and lots of other people who are doing pollinating projects post on that. We have a plan towards the end of the summer to do a display, a sort of educational display in the library. We've got permission to do that, and we're looking for good photographers. That's not one of our, at the moment in our group, one of our skill sets. We're good at sort of pretty sort of simple photographs for the Instagram, but could do more. We will be judging the sunflower competition. And finally, one other thing that we're hoping to take up with the new council is the whole question of the paving over of front gardens, which is, this had gone into decline a bit in our area, but now, ironically, with electric cars, people want to plug in their electric car. So there's been a resurgence of people paving over front gardens. And there's ways of doing this which doesn't obliterate all of the plants, which is actually very common. And there are issues, of course, with water runoff and things like that. So we're sort of, that's trying to maintain existing planting, if you like, because we're putting all this effort into developing new areas of planting. But if people pave over front gardens that have pollinating plants on them, then it's counterproductive. And finally, my last point is just to say that to date, East Finchley Community Trust did give us £500, but in fact, we haven't spent any of this yet. We've just had people subdividing plants, donating seeds, swapping seeds, and everything else everything else has been volunteer activity or sort of, been donated time, or we've had one or two things laminated, but that's all been donated. So as yet, we haven't spent the money, which is why we're wondering about this demonstrator, spending a little bit of money to improve our high road, because we've also just got some support for a town team for East Finchley to spend a bit of money to clear that bed and to do something nice with it. So that would use some of our money maybe, but it's all at the moment being run on enthusiasm, donation, sharing. It's been very sustainable and ecological. So that's a little bit about our actions. And I do have a few pictures, and I think I can, let me see if I can do this properly. I have to go share screen and just show, let me see if can people see that? Or have I lost people?
We can hear you very well, but personally I can't see.
You can't see it. Let me see. I'll try once more, and if not, I will. Now let's see what's happened here. Seems to have.
In order to share a screen, you have to be the host.
Yeah, and
I've enabled it. Oh, there we go.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a couple of pictures then. This is one of our examples in Cherry Tree Wood. This is the butterfly bed. This is access just across the road from the tube station. It's on the other side of the road, and you just enter Cherry Tree Wood. This is the tiny little bed at the library, which is another example. And then this is just done by one person, but on the social housing estate at Elmhurst Crescent, where residents are allowed to cut away a bit of the lawn, and where others are now being inspired by this person's example. It doesn't show a lot of pollinating plants in my picture because I took this earlier in the year, but there's actually more plants coming out. And then on the right, which just looks, maybe just on your screen looks a little bit like grass, but that is a wildflower meadow outside Monkey Puzzle Day Nursery opposite the queue. Not many, just a few flowers in the foreground, which Holly might even possibly be able to identify. But there's clover, there's different range of wildflowers there. And we're hoping that will become really quite colourful soon. And finally, just to say a couple of resources that you can see there. We often refer to this RHS Plants for Pollinators. And we also, our initial inspiration was the Pollinator Trail through the little town of St. David's in Pembrokeshire, where they have areas throughout the town, and we're trying to replicate that in our very urban area. That's me. I'll be quiet now. I'll stop sharing, hopefully. Yeah.
I think we will all agree that you guys have done absolutely amazing, and especially that all the sharing and everyone helping one another to share the resources that we have at home, whether it's seeds or plants and compost and the skills. Absolutely well done.
Yeah, it's really inspiring.
So now we're going to hear from, and thank you so much. Like, I've attended the talk, Kate, that you've done in January. And if you remember, I then said, we'll try to do the same in N3 and N12. So that's what we're doing now. It's all thanks to you.
Pollination.
Pollination. And now we want to hear a bit from Holly. And Holly will talk a little bit about how do we measure the success, potential success of such a project versus where we are currently. So thank you, Holly.
Right. How much time do I have? About 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll keep it quick. Yeah, Kate, that looks amazing. The volunteer effort looks incredible. So yeah, great stuff. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about how we can think about measuring success. It'll be mostly me bouncing ideas around. I'd really love to hear what everyone else thinks. But I don't know if anyone has heard of the Beelines project. It's a program organized by the charity Bug Life, which aims to create a whole network of insect superhighways across the UK. So these projects would fit really nicely into that idea. At the moment, as far as I know, and if anyone knows, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't seem to have a sort of national monitoring framework, but they encourage projects to get involved with different national monitoring schemes. So these might be with the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, which is what I do. We have these things called bee walks, which you walk a mile once a month and record what bumblebees you see. And also the UK butterfly monitoring scheme. So this is where you go and count them, the butterflies you see, and identify them every week. But the issue with those is they're quite time intensive. Even though once a month doesn't seem like too much, you realize that time slips away. And also they require you to identify the species correctly, and it is quite challenging to identify some bumblebees. I'll say that. So I narrowed it down to 2 ideas, and I'd really like to hear what you think about them. So there is something called a flower insect timed count that's run by the Pollinator Monitoring Network, and it's where you sit for 15 minutes in front of your little patch, 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, and the count itself lasts 10 minutes. And you don't need to identify to species level. You can just say hoverfly, bee, butterfly, and that will give us an idea of whether something that we're doing is working. But also, the thing that I found with these citizen science projects, it makes you feel rewarded. It helps take ownership of a place, and you can see over time that your efforts have been successful. And the other idea is a BioBlitz. I don't know if anyone's been involved in a BioBlitz, but they're super fun, and kids love it. It's a sort of 24-hour event, but we can change that. It doesn't have to be 24 hours. But you go around and you just count. It's a competition essentially to find as many species as you can and count as many species as you can. And I think those two are kind of my ideas about how we can monitor success. I know it might seem like a way off at the moment when we haven't planted anything yet, but I think now is a great time to start thinking about it, because as time goes on, you can see the change, hopefully, that's actually been made. So yeah, I think that's been a bit of a blitz from me. But yeah, I would really love to hear what people think they would enjoy, how we can build a community around monitoring success as well. And have I cut out a little bit? No, I haven't. Yeah, and yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to see our success over the years.
So these are both amazing ideas, and I totally agree as well that we need to start measuring and actually even before we do anything, because as you said, it's very rewarding to see hopefully a positive change, especially if we monitor the same spaces, whether we do it in our own patches, or we can maybe focus on strategic patches in that already exist in Finchley, allotments and things like that in the park. And so these two sound great to me, but as we said, we're going to open the discussion actually in 5 minutes. So so before we open it at 8:10, I'm just going to do another blitz of ideas. Again, write down if anything sounds exciting and interesting to you, or just doable. So the first one is that we need to protect the pollinators as well. So think about pesticides. How can we avoid them? How can we influence, whether it's other people doing the work in areas such as the council, such as paid gardeners, how we can actually influence them to avoid pesticides. We need to think about increasing the food. So everything we talked about planting, but also no mow May. How can we encourage people to take a part of not mowing? It's about flowers, but as Kate said, it's also about trees. It's not just wildflowers, which I think managed to attract the imagination of the nation, of the seed bombs and things like that, but it's more than that. And water, how can we maybe influence people to leave like a pebble, a flat sort of bath for with some pebbles or some wine corks for the pollinators to stand on while they drink the water. How do we actually identify neglected public plots in N3 and N12? How do we go about it, like as people, as groups? How can we encourage knowledge specifically in like gardening? Because like Kate said, isn't it amazing when people start to grow things from seeds and then they feel so free to share it because the cost was time cost rather than actual big cost? Or is it about getting the allotments involved and places or maybe gardening centers? How do we plan for pollinator protection all year long? So should we maybe come with a calendar on different projects that we can do, like bulb planting and things like that, some things that can happen in winter or in autumn, but will have effect in spring and in summer. What about the habitat protection? So as Kate mentioned, the bug hotels and the bee hotels, and how do we share the knowledge on like where to put them? Because I understand that it's also about sunny spots and south facing, and there's like ways to make sure that they do well. And how do we protect nesting sites? So if anyone has any ideas about that. And then specifically, how do we encourage group action? So I think East Finchley are extremely well connected. There's the charities, there's the business network. that you have a lot of things done here. So how do we tap into the networks that we have in Finchley N3 and N12? So is it something we can maybe talk with our own networks, like WhatsApp groups of street level, or maybe school class WhatsApp groups and things like that? How can we maybe organize community plantings? Is that a good idea? And maybe we find gardeners within our community that have some knowledge that they're willing to share. So maybe some workshops about like growing from seed, or from even planting. Some people don't know how to plant. So maybe that will, create some excitement and will bring people in through promising like free knowledge and demonstrations. So these are some ideas that I had, just to maybe inspire some people to see. And what we're hoping to do now is, Stephanie, if you're free, it's to maybe open the stage for everyone to do two things: is to just introduce themselves and their interest in their in this project, and also any sort of like ideas of what you think you can do, whether as individual or whether in a way that you can tap into your own network and just talk about ideas and things like that. We will share the recording of the conversation, but also some resources that people can ideally share with their networks as well. And I will take notes. I will listen to the discussion again and take notes. So there will be like notes from the meeting as well. So Stephanie, to you at this point.
Yeah, so maybe should we just start by sort of introducing ourselves or sharing, what attracted you to join this meeting, what your interest in pollinators and environmentalism might be. It'd be great to hear from you all. Does that sound good?
Okay, I'll start. Hi, everybody. Right. I'm Gina. I live down the road from Shiri in Fitzallen Road, probably the only house in the neighborhood with a wildlife pond in the front garden. And I'm a horticulturalist, and I teach both horticulture and run ecotherapy programs for people with severe mental health diagnoses. I have an allotment in the neighborhood, and I've been very engaged with environmental concerns for many decades. I'm just so thrilled that there's such a thing that will bring people together. I think one of the things that I would like to think about, a way of reaching out, is to those people who pave over their entire front garden. So that they can have cars in the front gardens. And look, there's nothing that is going to change that, but the notion of perhaps introducing an idea of having some planters outside, with whether you can grow your own vegetables, very, very simple, easy. And I'm sort of going to probably retire in the next year and a half, and that's something I would really like to take up, is just bringing nature to people's front doors and encouraging them, teaching how to plant. So this is my interest.
That's great. It sounds like we found you at the right time. Great. Who would like to introduce themselves next?
I don't mind going.
Hi, Alison.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alison. I got involved in all of this through the Eco Fair. I'm meeting Stephanie and Shiri. I'm an ex-teacher and used to work for the council promoting sustainable travel. So I've always been into environmental areas, and probably my interest in the local area and nature has grown because of COVID. And I've spent a lot of time now walking in the local area, and I've lived here 40 years, but I've seen so much of it more in the last couple of years. Having been made redundant, I am now trying to use my sort of teaching skills and crafty skills. So I make things from recycled materials. So you'll see me out and about litter picking and collecting cans, and then I turn them into little bugs and flowers and things. So that's currently what I'm up to. But I'd love to get involved in this, although my gardening skills are zilch, but I love the idea of a natural garden. So been on holiday in Switzerland a lot, and I don't know if you've been there, but their front gardens are always very productive gardens. So they're not just a lawn or a car park space. They're full of fruits and vegetables and beautiful flowers, and it just seems to be a tradition. And as people have said, we have so many car places being built these days. It's very easy to leave strips of growing space in there. I've just joined the Finchley Society, so that might be a way into connecting with the Finchley Society. And there's a local National Women's Register organisation as well, who have meetings, who have a Finchley Whetstone Mill Hill group. Again, they're always looking for people to speak, so that might be another place that a presentation could be done. What else did I note down? There was lots of thoughts about trying to map spaces and also recording data and that sort of thing. So some sort of interactive map would be great. And the other thing, Holly's lovely ideas of collecting data. We've had some people monitoring the brook for a study, and that got a lot of attention because as people walked past, there were these people all dipping in and collecting things, and that seemed a great way of engaging with people who wouldn't normally, they wouldn't come to a stall if you set it up, but they're nosy and they want to see what's going on. So I think doing some counts in some public places would be great as well. I think that's probably all. Oh, there's the Lodge Lane Residents Association. There's a fantastic lady there who grows amazing plants. So for one of the Lodge Lane fairs, she created lots of tiny plants that she was selling. So I might be able to work out where she is and give you the contacts there as well.
That's fantastic. And I think something that would be really useful is if we could share, well, I guess, Shiri, you're making notes, aren't you? But if we could kind of share any links we've got or whatever in the chat, so we can sort of take a look at those, that would be great. Are the Dollis Brook people you mentioned, is that they're called Dollis Brookers? Is that the group?
Yeah, the Dollis Brookers do litter picking, but the group who are actually doing the measuring were linked to something to do with the Thames. I should be able to find.
The river fly monitoring or something like that.
Yes,
maybe.
they were checking the quality of the water, but it was just the way that so many people, as they passed by, were interested in it. It seemed a really great way of, just grabbing attention and so on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good insight, actually.
I've attended some of the North Finchley Town Centre things as well. So there's a group of people, and they again seem to be very Lodge Lane linked, that residents association. So they definitely would be a good group to tap into.
Great, thanks for the ideas.
Sorry, this is Jude. They were just talking about the river fly, but I'm one of the little group that does the river fly monitoring just in Woodside Park. So I think I met the lady collecting cans. Yeah. So I live in Holden Avenue. I've been back in the UK about 18 months. I went and worked abroad for like about 27 years. So I still feel I'm reconnecting with the area. So I know Shiri through Doris Brooker's litter collecting and things. And then I did the ZSL Riverfly thing and also ZSL in March, monitoring outflow in the Doris Brook and things, the outfall safari thing, looking at sewage and things like that, or possible sewage contaminations. I was actually a wildlife vet nurse, so I know a bit about mammals and birds. I'm very poor on insects. The whole avenue that I live in, I'm still in an old house that has a shared garden. We have a patch each. I'm not very good on plants either. I try and grow a few things. I see a few bumblebees. I have a little wildlife pond that has some newts. But the whole avenues, all the old houses and the gardens have been knocked down. There's flats everywhere, car parks, little bits of green. So I know that the whole area from when I lived here before is, you know, I don't even see a sparrow now. I don't see a mouse. Yeah. So a hedgehog. Yeah. So it's changed. So I'm kind of reconnecting, but interested in, environment and wildlife. Yeah.
Right.
So a sort of relearning curve as well as regards to plants and insects and yes.
Super, great to meet you. Thank you for introducing yourself. I think Hilary Burridge, you have your hand raised.
Yes, apologies for coming in late. I had a medical crisis with somebody. It's fine. Anyway, we're here. The reason I put my hand up is that I live in North 11, and I'm just wondering whether I'm still supposed to be in the group, because I'm very new to Golders Green. I lived in Liverpool for nearly 50 years. And I came down with my husband because the grandchildren are here, basically. And I live right by Golders Hill Park, which I walk around every day, right? But I don't know if that's in the catchment. If it is, I'll tell you something else. But is that relevant? Or is that too far away?
So I think if we can still benefit from your experience, I think that would be amazing. Just because I remember that you have a very long a very nice history with environmentalism. So if you have any ideas, just do shoot.
Shall I tell them what?
The geographical coverage is N3 and N12, but then we hope to inspire other people to take the project to elsewhere.
Okay, well, in that case, I'll confess I do have a green history, right? I was a member of the Deaf for Science Advisory Council for 3 years until the government changed, basically. And I learned a heck of a lot on there because, you know, this is where the science policy is developed. I was also deputy chair of the Sustainable Development Group for the Northwest of England. And I've written things like, for instance, a paper which is still used on green hubs, which I think is quite relevant to what we're talking about how people can engage through green hubs and how important it is not to see them as just space, but to see them as active sort of parts of our environment that engage people and move them forward and stuff like that. So that's where my head is. I'm also an academic researcher and author. I write books about child protection and stuff like that, FGM, stuff like that. The other thing I was going to say is I trained as a teacher many years ago. I don't teach in school. I'm retired. Well, theoretically, I'm retired. But I did some really quite fun, engaging work with children in schools about Save Our Species and all this sort of business. That was a very long time ago, but the kids got it. And children love planting things and making things, and you know, maybe that is, I missed the first part of the meeting and I apologize for that, but maybe it's something to think about. And on the other side, why aren't we going to ask people just to move some of the stones? You live here, so you don't see it, but I live somewhere else. I have never seen so many paved over front gardens. I can't believe it. I walk every day. I'm very conscious of it. That's why there's flooding. You know, people need to be encouraged to put bricks with holes in every so far and little channels between, or, you know, I'm not the expert on how to construct those things, but that kind of thing for a few quid can make a heck of a lot of difference to the viability of that part of a street, for instance, because the water's going down under the paving and it's feeding the trees which are in the street. So it becomes a matter of common sense to people to facilitate watering the trees by simply putting some bricks with holes in on their pavement, or what, I mean, those kinds of things. I'm thinking about simple engagements that don't demand a great deal, whether it's children or adults, something, but kind of start to engage their imaginations, if that helps. I don't know. There we go.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it seems to be sort of common theme in this discussion about front gardens, and I think it's definitely something we could collectively think about as we, you know, sort of try to activate these green spaces across Finchley. Yeah, and great to have you here. It sounds like we have a lot to learn from you, probably. Anyone else would like to introduce themselves? Or
hello, we'll go next. But I'm Sorrel, and I live in Finchley Central on Falkland Avenue. I grew up in the countryside doing lots of these kinds of sort of nature type local activities, but have really kind of missed this kind of thing since being in London for the last sort of 10-12 years. I'm an academic scientist by background, and now I work for a cancer charity. But I really notice the impact of the kind of the small things, and that's what I've really kind of enjoyed hearing about on this call, like little things like putting up a few bird feeders and the things people have been talking about. I think it's so hard to influence those much bigger decisions about like paving over a front garden. It's a big decision for someone to make, but when you can just do those small things like get a window box, do some planting along the side, you know, and just getting people to start dipping their toe in the water with that kind of stuff. So that sort of really, really struck me. The other ideas that I've heard that I think are absolutely wonderful is the insect count. I can imagine people getting really up for that, and especially just building on, you know, the things like the Big Garden Bird Watch has been really kind of a big thing nationally, and just how many people do get involved with things like that. I think that kind of effect, even, you know, when it's on a very small local scale. The other things that I think have been wonderful to hear about from that East Finchley project is the sunflower competition. And I can imagine that going down really well with kids. And I also could imagine, I mean, it's just to kind of throw it out there, but some kind of like, something I always love is just going out in the garden and taking photos of flowers. I could imagine it's some kind of like photography competition, and especially with issues like, you know, wanting to get a photographer in, actually it would solve that problem if you just got people to be submitting all their beautiful photos of what they've been doing, and especially if it's, you know, if it's wildflowers. I think I would love to get more involved with this kind of thing. It's really striking me the amount of expertise on this group. I don't have too much of that, but lots of enthusiasm. Yeah, you want to pitch in, I'm sure.
I know, very quickly, I'm Simon, my Sorrel's partner. I live in N19 actually, but it's again been wonderful to hear, you know, to both hear about the things happening at a local level. You know, for me, I care hugely both about, you know, what can be done to increase the biodiversity within the area, and incredible what you can do in such an urban space, but also really care about its, I guess, for so what, like its impact on people's health and well-being. And I kind of, which came across in a lot of expertise clearly, you know, in the room here as well. But I think it strikes me that I wonder whether it'd be nice to kind of hear more perhaps at another time about what's being done, I guess, to explain to people around education about like why the pollination matters, and that, I guess, in a local way, like what it matters to. So I'm always interested in how do you reach out to a much broader group of people, like, so that this matters to everyone, as opposed to being the kind of, obviously we're all a group of enthusiasts, but how do you get everyone else involved? And you know, if you can be getting people involved in a small way, interests me. I would love to kind of help in any little ways I can. You know, my background, I'm a doctor who now works sort of at the interface of health and environment, and it would strike me a couple of things. One, how to get the council involved from a sort of well-being perspective, and I'd certainly be happy to help in that way, and also how to get local GPs involved, both in terms of encouraging their patients to get involved in terms of as kind of like positive prescribing for like well-being, but also like have a huge amount of their own estate, which could be involved in, you know, in planting and, you know, pollinating flowers, etc.
Yeah, that's some, I mean, great to meet you both. And yeah, really interesting thoughts, both in terms of the sort of idea of photography and photographing flowers and things like that, but also this idea of sort of well-being and, you know, looking at it from that perspective. And I think that is definitely something that we could work with the council on. I mean, the council, because I've been running this project with Make Good, who are a design studio activating the high street here in Finchley through a community-led events program, we're actually very much engaged. Well, the council actually commissioned that project, so they're aware of this initiative and really, really interested, especially now that Labour have taken over and declared a climate emergency. So I think, yeah, there's definitely some momentum in that direction, and yeah, it'd be great to have your support. Fantastic. Anyone else want to sort of say hello? I know that we're sort of running out of time because we were going to end at 8:30, but we could go slightly over. I don't know how anyone feels about that. If anybody wants to add anything or say hello.
I'd just like to chip in and say I think both of Holly's ideas are very good and might be taken up by friends of different parks and open spaces. The East Finchley, I should have said in my future actions that the East Finchley Pollinator Project are doing the big butterfly count, which runs from mid-July to 7th of August. And we're doing it near that butterfly bed in Cherry Tree Wood is the area we've identified. That's the 15-minute thing. But I'm going to look up both of the ideas that Holly mentioned. This sort of BioBlitz idea, I can imagine we could do something with several of these Finchley groups with that. I think it would be good, and then we could sort of find ways of sharing that. We're doing a newsletter every couple of months, so we could maybe post, you know, which butterflies we saw in our. I've just got this terrible fear that we'll go there for 15 minutes and see nothing in that designated 15 minutes. But we have been seeing more butterflies, but it's a better year than last year. So I don't know if it's evidence in any sense of our work, but we have seen there was a speckled wood I posted on our Instagram today. So that's a butterfly along the way.
Yes, I think they're wonderful ideas, both of those. And Shiri was actually just holding up a card, which is the back of the flyer for the Eco Show and Tell event, which we are holding this Sunday on the 22nd in Albert Place. So come on down, everyone. But on the back of that card, she has lots of butterflies, which you can use to identify as part of the big butterfly count. So Shiri, if you say something, everybody will be able to see it.
Okay. So yeah, so I was thinking about how do I get people to actually use this leaflet, you know, from a sustainability point of view. And I thought, why not print something useful on the other side of it? So that's actually from the big butterfly count, which takes place in 15th of July, between 15th of July to 7th of August this year. So I still have leaflets and people will be able to get them at the fair, and hopefully that will get people involved as well. So as Stephanie asked, is anyone else who didn't speak wants to say anything before we close? That's fine. So the next step, first of all, thank you really everyone. And I think what we're going to do is I'm going to take notes, write down what everybody said, share everything with everyone. And hopefully this is just a beginning of a much sort of longer talk that we can all have together and get together. Please email us sustainable.finchley gmail.com with any suddenly inspirational, any inspiration idea, any thought that you had that just came to you in the shower or something, and we can gather all of these together. Let me have a quick look. Stephanie, do you want to look at the chat to see if anything came up just very, very quickly?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. I've just dropped that email address in, sustainable.finchley@gmail.com, so you can reach us. Lots of comments in here, actually. But oh yes, I think Alison at the beginning was asking Kate. Oh no, it's Kate. You've shared those resources. That's great. Sometimes tweet for. Yeah. Yeah, I think. I mean, there's. I don't know. Do you want me to read them out, Shiri, or?
No, I think it's okay. Yeah, I think we can stop here, but it would be good if we just keep in touch until I send all the notes. So if you guys have created something new that wasn't there before, you decide to plant something, or anything, any action, etc., if you can let us know, because we don't have a newsletter like the Archer, so we'll just have to sort of keep in touch, in close touch, either through the group that we have on Nextdoor. We have the sustainability group we have on Facebook as well, or just email us, so we can sort of like understand what other people are doing and start joining the dots, and getting people to do things, if that makes sense.
I mean, I wonder if it might be worth, maybe this is something we can think about, and maybe if you let us know by email, but we could also think about having a regular kind of Finchley sustainability meeting or get together like this on Zoom or in real life as well. So, you know, that might be something useful, I think, to kind of progress the initiatives.
Yeah. That's a great. I think that's a great idea, and so maybe we'll add that. And Stephanie, we can talk about the logistics.
Yeah. Great.
So, and thank you so much to Kate.
Yeah.
Amazing project. Thank you so much for Holly. You've inspired us with all the measurement ideas as well.
Yeah.
And we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful to hear everyone, and it's just such a great initiative. I just wish us all great success.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dina.
Lovely to meet you all.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Simon, I've just put an email up for roger.chapman99@btinternet.com is the Green Spaces Network chair. So if anybody wants to be involved with it.
That's fantastic. I didn't even know this network existed. So that's really, really useful. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah. They try and influence things at a council level. So it's, and I've had, like the No Mow May, I've had quite a bit of success, but also they often encounter some difficulties as well. But,
yeah. Well, the manifesto they wrote is excellent for the sustainability strategy, with all the points, was really, really great to read. And
yes,
that was a great piece of work.
Yeah, yeah. Because there is a sort of London-wide one, but the Barnet one has only been going a couple, started just pre-lockdown, but they've done a lot of work since then. So it's an extra bit, and I'm sure people like Hilary and Holly's expertise would be useful. You know, it's just linking all the relevant people together. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to come to the Eco Fair, so if you see me there and you recognize me, I'll just try and, it's lovely to see people on Zoom, but it's much nicer to see them in person, I find. So
absolutely.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah,
looking forward so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, looking forward to coming to Finchley Central.
Woo!
Yay!
Bye now.
Again. Bye.
Bye. Bye.